Welcome back to the State and Local Sports Show. This is episode 10. I'm here with Mark Tennis, our co-founder and editor of CalHighSports.com. We are deep into the football season, the time of year when you go out to practice at 4 o'clock and it's already getting dark. Teams having some meals together this week, practicing on Thanksgiving. And one of the topics that comes up this time of year, especially now with an expanded state bowl system, is the length of the season. You look at a team like Folsom last year, won a state championship. They played 16 games. That's an NFL season for a team that doesn't make the playoffs. There's a lot of different views across the spectrum. I know St. Mary's coach who's playing against Folsom this week, Tony Franks, does not like the length of the season. He thinks maybe some shorter section playoff brackets can be in order. Your thoughts on the length of the season and just what it means for the health of the players, and especially given the CIF's recent statement about, football is certainly at a turning point in its time, especially at the high school level.
I think it's. I think for the bigger schools like Folsom and St. John Bosco down in Southern California and Corona Centennial, I think their programs are so well conditioned that playing 15, 16 games doesn't really make too much of a difference. I think they can handle it, and I think it'll be okay. The concern I would have is more for the smaller schools that are playing these long schedules. I mean, you look at even Stone Ridge Christian here in the Sac Joaquin section, they could play 15 games this year. They're playing in their championship game this week. They could have 3 bowl games after that because they're probably going to be in the play-in game for the North, and then a NorCal playoff bowl game, then a state bowl game. So I mean that's where it gets to be, I think, really kind of on the borderline ridiculous when you have a small school team. Their kids aren't used to playing even close to that many games, and then they're going to start playing 15, 16 weeks, and that's where the real problems could really come in.
A couple of potential, solutions or thoughts if they wanted to shorten the season. You can make the section playoff bracket smaller. Look in the Sac Joaquin section, divisions 1 through 3 or 16 teams. Maybe you pare that down where everyone's an 8-team bracket. The thing is, though, or shorten the regular season, but the thing is, of course, no one wants to lose their gate. Very few high school sports events are actually give schools and the sections some revenue. Football and basketball, sometimes a couple of the other sports because they're cheap. And I don't know if you're ever really going to talk anyone out of that potential for however many, 8 games or 6 games at home. And I think that's where the problem is. You always got to follow the money, and that's why I don't know if it'll ever really shorten up.
Yeah, I don't think it'll ever really shorten up, and it is all about the money. Schools don't want to cut to a 9-game regular season. Section playoffs, nobody wants to cut a round out because the section makes so much of their yearly budgets on football playoffs, and the state just started the system, so they certainly don't want to eliminate a round or whatever. So I think what we'll see is this thing go forward, and there'll hopefully be some studies because California is not the first state to be trying 16-week seasons. It goes on in other places in the country, and hopefully there's some people that are doing a lot of research. And if there's a lot of research that really shows this is these long seasons are real detrimental to kids, they're gonna have no choice but to have to cut them back some way somehow.
Looking at the area football playoffs, I mentioned St. Mary's. They're a number 5 seed to go up to play number 1 Folsom, a team that went 16-0 last year with Jake Browning, the quarterback, who's now the University of Washington starter. They got that vaunted blue turf up there. And this is part of what your weekly column for us touches on, what makes Folsom such a juggernaut. I mean, there's such a great talent pool in the Sacramento area, but it's hard to really ascend to the top of that, and they've managed to, so it says something about them. And your research and what you've heard, what do you attribute that to?
I think a lot of it is the level of preparation that Folsom is able to put into their game plans, their seasons, everything leading up to it. You have to remember that Troy Taylor, their co-head coach, is a former college quarterback, a former announcer. He's a well-regarded quarterback coach in the Sacramento area and in Northern California. He runs a great offense, develops quarterbacks, works with those kids. When I first saw them running all their complicated schemes and the plays written on the wristbands and the signs on the sideline, a la Oregon, just like Oregon, I thought it was this is going to be too complicated for high school kids to run an offense like this. But they not only run it, but they run it very, very well. And you have to really credit their level of preparation and discipline and the way they execute that offense. It's pretty incredible.
The other area team still alive, Sierra football, heading to their first ever section championship game, a school that opened 21 years ago. They take on Liberty Ranch of Galt. Right now, at least for one website, calpreps.com has them as a 7-point favorite. If they win, as we mentioned earlier, an expanded state bowl system, they will get an automatic regional bowl game. Your thoughts on who they might play? I know that you've spoken before about, the state won't want these ridiculously long road trips, so maybe a Bay Area team, something like that. Your thoughts, I know it's tough to judge at this point, on who a Sierra might play, a school of about 1,300 kids from Manteca.
The teams that I think are in Sierra's range for a potential bowl game would be Orland in the northern section, which is Northern Section Division 2. They're playing actually on Wednesday night, I believe. And then you have McClymonds of Oakland is undefeated. They're not as good as they were last year, but McClymonds has actually given Central Catholic a couple of decent games recently. But McClymonds is undefeated. Somewhere in that range of around 18 to 19 to 20 on the board. And as you mentioned, the CIF is not going to seed these teams. They're going to look at the board and they're going to move teams around a little bit based on travel and a lot of other concerns. They may not want rematches for certain sections to happen right away, in the first round of these games. So I think there's a lot of moving parts. That's a very fluid board. There are a lot of changes that they're going to consider. And I think kind of Sierra's in that range where they're not going to play Hillmar, I don't think, or the Sac Joaquin Division 6 winner in a game, and they're going to be probably behind the Division 5 winner, Sonora or Bear River. So they're going to be behind that team, even though they're 4 and the other team is 5. So you have to keep in mind that your division and the section means nothing. It's where you're going to be placed in the state, in the NorCal Bowls. That's what they're going to look at. And I kind of think Sierra's in that range around where they might play in Orland or maybe McClymonds, somewhere in there.
That makes sense that they'd be behind the Division 5 winner. Their opening game, they lost to Ripon by a couple of scores, while Sonora, the Division 5 number 1, and then Bear River, the number 6, both beat them, at some point. So that makes a lot of sense there. I went up the hill to San Andreas to cover the Sierra Calaveras Division 4 semifinal last week. One of your columns before, something we spoke about before, is the state's outlawing of the Redskins mascot beginning in mandatory 2017. And over the loudspeaker, Calaveras, the PA guy said, hey, we have ballots for, what do you want the new nickname for Calaveras to be? And at some point he said they did this, and I believe it was at Chowchilla, don't quote me on that, but one of the other schools voted, and I'm not sure if it was a write-in, I'm guessing it was. They voted to keep the Redskins, and everyone in the crowd cheered. We've spoken about this before. Your thoughts on the state of the saga, and I don't expect you to know because neither of us are legal guys, but what happens if the school gets to, winter of 2017 or spring and is still refusing to budge?
I'm not sure what the legal ramifications would be if they refuse to budge, but they're gonna have to. These are school boards. They're gonna make them choose a different nickname or do something, and maybe the crowd is gonna vote to stay with Redskins, but there'll be a second choice that they'll have to go with or something like that. They'll just have to. They just they just will.
Yeah, and again, this is just Calaveras fans at a game. Who knows what level of seriousness that cheer was for.
Of course they're not happy about having to change their nickname. There's a lot of tradition. We all know that, but the law is the law, and that's the way it's been brought down, and maybe that's not the way to do it, but that's the way it is right now, and they're going to have to change.
All right, and not only a great time for high school sports in general, but specifically at CalHighSports.com, their preseason boys and girls basketball rankings up, a lot of state bowl game coverage. You got a video with Mark Tennis here kind of laying out the bowl format on a whiteboard, so it's very plain and easy to see. Their Gold Club membership, less than $20 a year, less than $2 a month, well worth it. And as always, Mark, thanks for coming in and talking sports with us.
Thank you, Thomas. Always great to be here.